When we analyze politics all around the American continent, sometimes you will be surprised that things are different from what they look. For example, if we compare the actions that are taken from Argentina President Javier Milei, newly elected, or the El Salvador President Najib Bukele, comparing the action of these two leaders with the one that are taken from Justin Trudeau from Canada, you will be surprised that probably you have a new way of look at politics and a new way of looking and understanding the continent from north to south. But in order to have a clear picture of what is going on in America, in the continent, we have to think about Fidel Castro. Well, actually, Fidel Castro was the beginning of the 21st century socialism. The 21st century socialism spread firstly all around Latin America thanks to Hugo Chavez that started this concept in Venezuela, and then other countries adopted it. For example, Argentina, Brazil, El Salvador, and also some country in the north part of the continent. Canada of Justin Trudeau. Justin Trudeau is a socialist, and if we compare the actions of Justin Trudeau with the other leader, Najib Bukele in El Salvador and Javier Milei in Argentina, that are liberal, we can arrive to some important conclusions. In order to understand very well the situation, you have also to comprehend that Fidel Castro has been a brutal dictator. But despite being a brutal dictator, there were many intellectuals and many people all around the world and in America also that had an image of him as somebody that was working for his country and for its people. But in fact, what Castro was doing in Cuba, and you should know very well if you have visited Cuba and if you have touched with your hand the poverty in Cuba, the only thing that Castro was assuring and Castro regime was a good life for the members of the party, for the member of his inner circle, but most of the people are living in extreme poverty. And some other, the lucky one, were able to migrate to the United States. So, what lessons we can have if we compare the socialist government of Justin Trudeau with two other liberal governments that had been oppressed by Castro ideology? Yeah, you listen well, Castro ideology. Why I'm saying that? Well, it's very easy to understand. The socialism of the 21st century, its origin, are in the Castro communist vision of the world. So all started with the communist vision of Castro and how to control his country, how to manage in an authoritarian way his people, how to build up the Castro dictature. So from this idea, the other government all throughout the region probably took some, and even from this original idea, the other government all throughout the region started with the evolution that we know of the original idea as the socialism of the 21st century. But you will be surprised that most of the countries that have embraced this new ideology end up in being the same dictator that were in Cuba. So what Castro was really able to do was to export his way, his authoritarian way, to control and to limit the freedom of his people. For example, Venezuela. President Maduro decided that the opponent that had most chances of becoming president instead of him was not able to run, Corina Machado. He decided that Corina Machado shouldn't be able to run. This is, so dictators simply, if they have somebody that opposes them, they put them in jail or they inhabilitate these people. In that way, they are able to remain on power. In Canada, we have Justin Trudeau. Actually, if we look at this party, many people would consider his party a social democratic party. But if we look at his actions, maybe, just maybe, we can conclude that it is not such democratic as he should say. For example, he embraced the gender philosophy, the gender ideology, the inclusive language, all the goals of the green, of the leftist green, and is imposing all these ideas in the country. For example, one of the results of his actions, the action that is happening in Canada, is the limitation to Jordan Peterson. Jordan Peterson is suffering from the repression, from this, I would say, maybe strong or maybe brutal repression. But we have another example of this repression. For example, what happened with the truck drivers' protest, the one that weren't agreed to take an obligatory vaccine. So we have a clear example how a social democrat, as should be Justin Trudeau, ends up in a very authoritarian way. On the opposite, we have the example of Argentina, where a liberal, Javier Milei, has been elected. Javier Milei took a decision that at government level, it wouldn't be possible to use the inclusive language and the gender ideology anymore. Something similar did Nayib Bukele in El Salvador. They decided that in school, the gender ideology shouldn't be taught. So, are they liberal or maybe they are not so liberal? Well, the answer is very easy to understand if we look at what their decision means. And if we compare it with what is happening, for example, in Canada. In Canada, where these ideologies are guiding the actions of the Prime Minister and his government, all the country is forced in changing toward this ideology, but in an authoritarian way. On the other side, for example, in Argentina, Javier Milei said that at private level, everybody should use the language that prefers. But at institutional level, it is important to use a correct Spanish, as it should be. So we have an example of real freedom. The one that you have now in Argentina is a real freedom. And Milei has been able to free Argentinian people from old concepts that were inherited by the Peronists that had implemented the gender ideology as well as the inclusive language. Milei decided to free the Argentinian people and to make the Argentinian people able of choosing the language that they prefer the most at private level. But at public level, the language should be the one that is correct. So, in my opinion, if we take as an example Bukele in El Salvador, that with his action also freed his people. In fact, in Salvador, there was a very high criminality rate, and he was able to reduce it dramatically. So he was able to free his people. So if we take Bukele as an example, or Milei as an example, in comparison with what is happening in Canada, we should conclude that Canada is more looking right now in authoritarian, is more similar, maybe not exactly the same, but is tending and is looking similar to what was the Cuba of Fidel Castro, an authoritarian place with the freedom very limited. On the opposite side, you have more freedom at the moment in Argentina or in El Salvador. So we have an important lesson that has been taught from Argentina, from El Salvador to North America. How to become free. For example, limiting and not obliging the people to take an ideology as mandatory and obligatory. I have been listening to few discussions of Justin Trudeau when he has the opportunity to explain his view on environment. And to be honest with you, I have to say that it looks very convincing. But then I had some news that in order to go to his vacation, he was using private flights. Well, actually, private flights have two problems. The first one, they are extremely polluting. And the second one, their cost. With the cost of a private flight, you should provide food for poor people for a long time. So my question is Justin Trudeau really worried about the environment, or is worrying by limiting the people working in Canada, the middle class, and not limiting himself? This is the question that I have. And then I have another question. I know Canada. Actually, a few years ago, I was flying over British Columbia, and we had been flying over a gold mine. It was immense. I'm not against mining. I consider that mining is necessary for the human development. But at the same time, if Justin Trudeau is so concerned about environment, I haven't any news about strict limitation on mining. Maybe he limited mining, but it seems that part of his speech is pro-environment. But at the same time, he forgets to say that mining is very damaging for the environment. So in this case also I have some doubts. But maybe I'm wrong, maybe I didn't have all the information. But it seems also in this case an ambiguous position of Mr. Trudeau. But anyway, what do you think about that? Let me know in the comments, and if you like the video, please share it with your friends and do not forget to subscribe. Thank you.